Hey everyone, this is Congressman Matt Gaetz. I am speaking to you live from my congressional office in Washington, D.C. We're still here at the Capitol complex after a long week, after a long day of hearings with Alejandro Mayorkas, the head of the Department of Homeland Security, the guy who's supposed to be controlling the border, totally failing. I want to brief you about what's going on at the border. Right now, we are simulcasting. We've got hundreds of you that are dialing in on the phone right now. And if you've got a question, a comment, a suggestion, an opinion you want to share with me, hit *3. You're going to be organized by a member of one of our staff so that we handle the right issues at the right times. And if you're one of the thousands watching online as we stream on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, Twitter, Getter, just across the board, I think Instagram as well, just leave your question in the comments. We'll try to get to those. I already see Greg B. Gimber saying Joe's gotta go. So *3 if you're on the phone, comments in the section if you're one of the folks watching online. And again, if you're just joining us, this is Congressman Matt Gaetz live from my office in the United States Capitol. And I really want to start by letting everybody know that the Biden administration has just made a request of the Congress for $33 billion in aid and assistance and weapons for Ukraine. $33 billion. Now, keep in mind, when President Trump was in office and we wanted, $1 billion or $2 billion or $3 billion for border security for this country, oh my gosh, the Democrats put us through the ringer. They blocked us every chance they could. What we got, we had to trade remarkable amounts of spending on stuff that we never would support to get. So $33 billion aid for Ukraine. It's the President Biden recommended package. I want to know what my constituents in Northwest Florida think about it. So if you're on the phone right now, press 1 if you support the Biden $33 billion package for Ukraine. Press 2 if you oppose. 3 if you're unsure, want to learn more information. So again, the question is on the $33 billion package: 1 to support, 2 to oppose, 3 unsure. We're going to get to that poll in just a quick moment. But first, actually, I've got Mark from Crestview on the line. Mark, what's your question or comment as folks are registering their opinion?
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking your time to hear this, sir. I'm the commander of Chapter 57 here at Crestview DAV, and we have a very pressing issue with that I believe ties into 22 a day with suicides, and that is our medical retirees being denied their earned retired pay. The Chapter 61 medical retirees, both combat and non-combat. This is earned retirement pay that can be fixed with just a stroke of a pen, I believe. While other retirees that have over 20 years or 20 years and over are in receipt of their retired pay. Concurrent receipt was started back in 2004, and it said it would be implemented over time, but it was halted. I know that the Major Richard Starr Act is on the floor and it's being worked on, but that's for combat. That's the brothers and sisters that were injured in combat, but there's a bunch of us that have been waiting a long time and been denied. So what can you do for us, sir?
Well, I support that. I tell you what, if there's specific legislation, we're going to grab your information and have a staff member get back to you. Because if there are, you said with a stroke of a pen this could happen, sometimes those things require action from Congress, sometimes they don't, and I would need to do a little more legal research in that, but we'll definitely get back to you, and I appreciate you sharing your opinion and directing us to an important priority.
House Rule 333.
All right, well, I'll go check on it, and looks like something I would support. Appreciate that feedback. I wanted everybody to know how folks responded to the Joe Biden $33 billion aid, military, humanitarian request package. 18% support, 68% oppose, 14% unsure, undecided, or want to know more. So that, I think, is a pretty overwhelming response that a lot of questions Americans have about why we would send $33 billion to Ukraine. It's really quite something. We got a lot of questions about immigration. If you are just joining us, Congressman Matt Gaetz here. Hit *3 on the phone if you've got a question or comment, and I'm going to get to immigration in just a moment. I've got a lot to brief you on. But first, I think I had a question from Dan in Pensacola. Dan, go right ahead with your question or comment.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Matt.
Oh, yes.
First of all, I voted for you in the past, and we'll continue to vote for you. However, I need to ask this kind of a question to make sure that we're satisfied that as voters that you're not becoming part of the problem in D.C. Have you taken any money from any of the liberal interest groups for your election fund, and are you purchasing any kind of defense stock to kind of pat your portfolio, those kind of things? We just don't want you to become one of them.
Well, here's what I can assure you. Not only do I not own any defense stock, I don't own any stock. And I'm actually on a bipartisan demand that includes some of the most far-left people like AOC, but we've actually teamed up to say that no members of Congress should own and trade individual stocks. It's a conflict of interest. We come into contact with too much information, and it erodes the trust of the public when you have members of Congress or their spouses, right? Like Nancy Pelosi's husband, who trades stocks and seems to do quite well on them with the information that he has. So I don't own any stocks. Now, when it comes to taking money, you're totally right. Members of Congress are responsive to their donors, to the people who give them money, okay? And anybody who tells you different is lying to you. And folks who take hundreds of thousands of dollars in special interest money then do favors for those special interests rather than their constituents. So I am here to tell you, not only do I not take any money from left-wing liberal special interests, I don't take any money from conservative right-wing interests. I don't even take money from the NRA, even though I agree with virtually everything the NRA says and does, because I just think that campaigns ought to be able to be funded by the people, we the people. So I'm probably not even supposed to talk about this on my Tele-Town hall, but my campaign has over 100,000 individual donors from all over the country. And I think they average like $38 in a donation to me. And then I work for the people who only want me to be at my best rather than working for the lobbyists and special interests. But let me turn the question back on you. Should we pass the bill that says nobody in Congress should own any stock? And would you support a bill that would make it illegal for lobbyists and PACs to donate to political campaigns?
Absolutely, 100%. I agree with you totally, and I think you're thinking correctly on all these things.
Awesome. Well, I really appreciate that. And, eager to hear how other folks think about campaign finance. That's always a policy question that we get here. So I got to talk about the border. I got to talk about what's going on. Right now, the Department of Homeland Security is preparing for 18,000 people every single month to be encountered at the border. And when those people get in the country, it's pretty much catch and release. And they're sent not just throughout the border states, but to everywhere in the country. And there were 3 Trump-era policies that really ensured that we never would have to release someone internally in our country. First was the Remain in Mexico policy. Waiting for asylum, they should be remaining in Mexico, not in the United States. Second was the Safe Third Country policy, which ensured that if someone went from Guatemala into Mexico, they could stay there. If they went from El Salvador into Honduras, they could stay there rather than thinking the only place they could be is here in your neighborhood and in my neighborhood awaiting those claims. And then finally is Title 42. And this was the public health measure that allowed us, because of COVID, to send people back to their country of origin, to send them right back across that border. And Title 42 has basically already come to an end. In preparation for its legal expiration, we're hearing reports right from the border that they're not rejecting people for public health anymore, which, by the way, the Biden administration won't support ending the national emergency status in our country, but they're willing to change this public health law. There is a question from Dennis in Pensacola about this. Dennis, go right ahead with your question or comment. Title 42.
Hey, Matt. Thanks for taking my call. I have served in the military, and I'm a retired pilot, and I've Vietnam, Desert Storm, Iraq, and Afghanistan. And, I see that, with the administration we have now, like you just said, Title 42, we still need to keep it, because we're at a point where I think America is being too good for its own good, okay? We can't take everybody, if we do, what's going to happen to what upsets me, Matt, is I see Americans on the street. I see veterans on the street. But yet we're housing these people. We're, like you said, releasing them all over the country. We got to put Americans first.
What do you think about the hypocrisy of them saying we have to live under a national emergency, but it's not enough of an emergency to tell people who weren't invited to our country that they have to go home?
Well, if they're not going to be productive citizens of the United States, and they just want to live off the welfare system, they need to leave.
Well, and that illegal immigrants are on welfare at a rate of twice Native Americans, right? It's like a ratio of 2 to 1, so it's pretty out. It's pretty up there.
I can.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks for your feedback. We got a lot of folks who are trying to weigh in right now on the immigration issue, the crisis at our border. This month, there will be more encounters at the border from illegals than any other month in America's history. And you know what record we broke? Last month. And you know what will break the record again? Next month. And here's the question. Should Alejandro Mayorkas be impeached? The head of Homeland Security is not protecting the homeland, and they're doing it on purpose. And so I want your feedback. I got a caller coming in who wants to talk about this issue. But if you think Mayorkas should be impeached, I want you to press 1 now. If you think he should not be impeached, press 2. If you're unsure, press 3. Brian from Gulf Breeze, go right ahead with your perspective on a Mayorkas impeachment.
Am I live?
You're live.
Oh, yes, sir. Mayorkas should be impeached for gross incompetence. It's either that or he has deliberately failed in his job, and he should be tried as such.
Do you think it's incompetence or do you think it's on purpose? Because I might disagree with you here.
It's on purpose, sir. It's on purpose. You look at Mayorkas. You look at Austin. You look at literally all the rest of them. They have literally failed by the numbers, every single one of them. Mm-hmm. This can't be by accident, because if it was accidental, somebody would have gotten something right sometime in the last 14 months.
Like the broken clock that's right twice a day, right?
Exactly, sir.
All right, what do you think is the strongest argument for impeachment? If I'm writing the articles with Jim Jordan and Marjorie Taylor Greene, what's at the top of your list? Is it the Title 42 public health stuff? Is it that everybody gets an asylum claim? Is it that they stop the wall construction? What do you think is, I learned as a lawyer, you put your best argument first. What do you think is our best argument?
Don't even go with anything that Trump put forward. Don't. Go back to Reagan. Reagan passed laws, or better yet, Obama's own texts, his own thoughts, his own speeches. Go back to what the Democrats have said and pass as Democrats, and impeach him on fit, follow that law.
You heard it there. Use the Democrats' old arguments against them. Brian, thanks so much for your feedback. We have a call from Milton also. It looks like someone who watched the Mayorkas testimony this week. What did you think from your Secretary of Homeland Security? Bootsy and Milton.
Are you talking? Oh, it's Bootsy. Hi.
Hi.
Thanks for taking my call. I would like to know how Mayorkas can sit there and lie and get by with it. He said that when they inherited the border, it was the biggest mess ever. That was a blatant lie. And
totally.
Now challenge him on that. And I'm going all through Fox News and everything. Nobody did. They just let it go. And they're lying about you, too. And I mean, at least you were on TV last night defending yourself. But what is with this? What is with this lying?
There is a whole effort in Washington, D.C. to try to recreate the truth. Because whether it's big media, big government, or big tech, they actually think the American people are dumb and don't realize what's going on. That they are allowing our country to slip into a state of disrepair and decline just so long as they get more power. You saw that with Dr. Fauci. You see that with the Biden administration across the board. Prior caller made mention of Lloyd Austin and the Department of Defense. I think you actually raise a really good point. We probably could have done a better job pressing Ali Mayorkas on the specific features of the Trump agenda that were repealed. Now, Brian, who was the last caller, said, don't go back to the Trump stuff, get more fundamental with kind of even, the areas where Obama and Reagan were agreeing about getting folks out. I don't know. Reagan and Obama, they were a little more pro-amnesty than I am. But what do you think, Bootsy, was the strongest argument you saw? Go ahead.
Matt, you raised the best thing when you said that, why won't anybody press him on that? If Trump was so bad, what did he do so wrong? I mean, nobody ever, they just say these things and nobody ever makes them answer question number 2. Same with that girl up there with the red hair, Jen Psaki or whatever. She says lies and never ever is clarifying them. That's my point.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for making it. Thanks for participating. We got a lot of comments coming in as well. I love Charlotte's comment on Facebook. We know what's going on. And you know what? I know it too. And when you just tell the truth to people, it has a remarkable ability to drive change. And that's what we need. We need Republicans in Congress that will actually win people's battles again. And we have to win the battle on the border or we lose the country. Listen to these numbers on impeachment for Ali Mayorkas. 83% support, 12% oppose, 5% unsure. Nobody is fooling the good people of Northwest Florida. I've got a lot of questions, a lot of comments about the wall, the status of the wall. Rodney from Destin is with me, and there were places where the Trump wall was going right along, being effective, and then you see the Biden administration immediately halt construction and really sabotage the border. So I'm eager for your perspective, Rodney. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks, Matt. Rodney Braden here in Destin. It's 2 things. I agree with giving Ukraine weapons, no cash, no $33 billion for sure. In the wall, I'm in the same agreement as I've always been. Build the wall, like Trump said. Use the door if you want to come in this country.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Well, I got to tell you, Rodney, I went down to the border, and like half the illegal aliens I encountered told me they were on their way to Florida. So I was in Arizona. I told them to follow the sun west until they found Florida.
That's right.
Take care, man. Thanks so much for participating. We actually are going to change gears a little bit and talk about the Second Amendment, get some of our Second Amendment questions to the top of the queue. And Michael from Pensacola, you had a firearms question. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I was curious to know how you feel about constitutional carry of firearms in the state of Florida. I know it's not exactly in your wheelhouse, but...
Well, I'm a gun owner, so I guess it could be in my wheelhouse that way.
Well, I guess it is then.
I am totally for constitutional carry. I think that the only permit you should have to exercise your God-given rights is the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution. That Second Amendment wasn't written so that you could then go and rent back your own rights from your government that chooses to dole those rights out to you. The reason the Second Amendment is in the Bill of Rights is because those rights are vested in us. They belong to us, not the government. So I'm for constitutional carry. I'm for open carry. When I was a state representative for the good folks in Okaloosa and Santa Rosa counties, I was the author of the legislation to try to move Florida to an open carry state. Unfortunately, we had some liberal Republicans that blocked it at that time. But I am really, really excited what I see out of our governor, Ron DeSantis, for gun owners and on gun rights. He wants to make Florida a constitutional carry state, and I think that would make our community safer. What do you think the effect would be of that law, Michael?
I think crime would drop drastically if everyone thought everyone else had a gun. And, I've carried concealed for 30 years. Pray to God I never have to use it, but I'd like to have it if I need it. And I'm tired of paying basically a tax to get a license to carry concealed. So I hope the governor does, see it fit to give us constitutional carry.
Well, let's get everybody's opinion. How about this? And thank you so much, Michael, for participating. If you support constitutional carry, press 1. If you oppose constitutional carry, press 2. If you're unsure about constitutional carry, press 3. You've already heard my opinion on it. We've got an opinion from Tiffany from Milton. Tiffany, what do you think? How are you voting on constitutional carry?
I am so for it. I personally choose not to carry one because I have a child. But my husband, he will carry, and he's a truck driver, so I would prefer him to carry. But, no, I have one question. Would constitutional carry, would that mean you can open carry as well, or would it just be concealed?
Well, there are different versions, right? So there's some bills that would be full open carry, constitutional carry, some concealed. I would support both. What do you think?
I think it should be both. I mean, I used to live in Kentucky, and when they changed it to constitutional carry, the crime rate dropped drastically.
Really?
And, like, in Louisville, Kentucky, they were having murders daily. And once they passed it, it was still once every other week, but it still dropped.
Okay. Well, that's very, very helpful perspective from a different place that made that change in the law. Thanks so much for joining us and weighing in.
Thank you.
All right, so we got the results of our poll, and constitutional. I love all the people on Facebook who don't have the ability, the folks on the phone, to dial in, so they're just hitting 1 and hitting it. I've got almost all 1s from the Facebook crowd. The Facebook crowd, very pro Second Amendment. Constitutional carry is more popular than impeaching Mayorkas over the border. 87% of you support constitutional carry, 6% oppose, 7% unsure. If you've got a question or comment, hit *3 for me. We'll get you in the queue. We've also got a comment. Terry on Facebook said, I paid for my license to carry here in Pensacola. Stupid. I guess that's like how Trump used to say sad. But Terry says stupid that we would ever. I agree. Have to rent our rights back from the government. I just can't even believe that that's necessary. It shouldn't be necessary. We heard the value of giving law-abiding gun owners full access to the rights that are entrenched in our Bill of Rights and that are vested in our fellow Americans by God. So I'm super excited about everyone's perspective on that. We've got a question from Shirley from Pensacola back on the Ukraine matter. Shirley, go right ahead with your question or comment.
Yes, didn't we send them a bunch of money, and he complained that it wasn't fast enough?
Yes. Yes.
And then I found out he used to be a comedian, because what I think he should have done was went along with Putin until they was able to get him out of office. Now, look, that was a beautiful country. It is messed up. I mean, I don't agree. I don't think Biden ought to send no $33 billion, no.
Well, I'm not for the $33 billion, but I definitely don't blame someone who is a comedian. I mean, I think one of America's greatest presidents was a reality TV star, and certainly Putin's not a good guy. He's not a friend of our country, but I just don't understand how we can be so free to give away money when our nation is in debt and when we have people with issues here in America. $33 billion could do a lot of good in our country. And while I sympathize with the people in Ukraine, and I certainly hope they win and beat Putin, I don't get the sense that, washing them in cash and weapons is going to be necessarily the best thing. I mean, don't you remember when we were washing Afghanistan and all these weapons and cash in Iraq? Sometimes that doesn't exactly go the way you think it's going to go. Let me ask you this question, Shirley. If you were going to use that $33 billion in here in America, what would you do with it? Would you pay down our debt? Would you build roads? What would you do?
Well, that's a good question, and it's the infrastructure. That's true, and we do need that. So but it's a lot we could do here. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. And my husband fought in Vietnam, and he said, didn't they learn something from Vietnam? So that's all I got to say, and I'm gone. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for your feedback. Sounds like someone had a smart mother. Let's see. Sarah in Pensacola, what's your feedback?
The Mayorkas, Secretary of Homeland Security, I believe he should be impeached, but I'm more concerned about this truth factor agency of the government.
Yes.
Going to decipher what is true.
Yes.
I mean, that went really well with Biden's laptop, didn't it? And that, all those people in the FBI and the CIA that signed on to that. And I can't trust a government agency to be in charge of what's true and what's not true. The other thing I want to put my 2 cents in is that I think we need a balanced budget, and I don't think that congressmen should have their cushy pension and they get it when they leave office instead of waiting like the rest of us that are on Social Security. I don't think that Congress should exempt themselves from any laws they make. If it's good enough for us, it's good enough for them.
Amen. I'm not in the congressional pension program, frankly, because I don't intend to be here that long. I don't think this is like a job that anyone should do for life. I think our founder said, you come here, you do your time, and then you should go back and live under the laws that you helped create. There's an important point you raised, though. I don't want to get off of it. Very important. The Department of Homeland Security is now setting up a special wing to deem what information is true and what is disinformation. Now, take just for a moment that is a terrible idea. You don't want your government getting to own the imprimatur of the truth. See, I have a very high view of our fellow Americans. I think the American people can decide what's true. I think that they can analyze information, compare sources, ask tough questions, background research, without having either big government or big tech have that kind of control over us. What is especially troubling, and you mentioned this too, Sarah, is that the very person, Nina Jankowicz, that the Biden administration is putting in charge of this new truth ministry, signed the letter saying that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation.
Right.
So the very person that they're going to tell you that your opinions are disinformation is a known peddler of disinformation. How's that make you feel?
Not well. I just want to put one last comment in. Is this with this extra $3 billion that Biden now wants to give to Ukraine? If he had given them the MiGs and the big guns to begin with before the invasion, we wouldn't be in this position.
Well, thank you for your feedback. Thanks for being my boss and my constituent. Got a lot of comments coming in on Facebook. Terry says that $33 billion should go to pay down the debt. We don't really talk about the debt anymore. Like, we have a crippling debt that could ultimately result in the U.S. dollar no longer being the global reserve currency. And it's like nobody talks about it. And frankly, Republicans and Democrats have been at fault. Terry says pay down the debt. We had feedback from Betty saying term limits are a must. that what we heard from the previous caller about congressional reform with stocks, with pensions, that none of it matters if you don't also have term limits. And Eden says that I'm wearing a lovely tie. So thank you very much to all of you for that feedback. My wife got it for me. We got another caller, David from Fort Walton Beach, about this whole Ministry of Truth that Mayorkas has set up at Homeland Security. David, what's your perspective on it?
Hey, Congressman, thanks for having me on it. My concern is I feel it's a direct violation of our First Amendment right. I know how Democrats get. I know how liberals are and how they twist the truth, how they suppress conservative opinions, and how they twist the truth around to fit their narrative. I just want to know what do you think the Republicans in Congress are going to do about this ridiculous Ministry of Truth?
Oh, right now, the Republicans, where I serve in the House of Representatives, have very little power to block funding or authorization. I am expecting that we're going to be in the majority, and what I think is that we should use the power of the purse. We should say we're not funding the Ministry of Truth. We're not funding the resettlement of illegal aliens into our country. We're not funding all of the woke departments and divisions at DOD that tell our service members that they've got to get in touch with their white rage. We stop funding some of these entities of public health that have acted more like tyrants than actual public health function. That's the stuff. I mean, would you like to see Republicans in Congress use leverage with dollars to achieve these policy goals?
I would love to see that. I would love to see Republicans really. There's just a few conservative congressmen and women that have a backbone. What's going on with the rest of them? And honestly, I'm not sure if I trust McCarthy. I know I've read what he's said about you in this whole.
I know. You heard what did you think about what he said about your congressman?
I was furious. I was very angry. Let me tell you, there's a few folks up there that some of the Republicans, the rhinos. I'm glad they're not running for re-election. But McCarthy really angered me. He really did, and I'm not happy about it. I thought the guy was more of a conservative. Now I'm starting to see him more as a rhino.
Well, I mean, let me, for those of you who didn't hear what the leader of the Republicans in the House of Representatives said about me, he was on a call with Liz Cheney and Steve Scalise, the number 2 person in our conference, and he said that because I was criticizing Liz Cheney for being anti-Trump, which, by the way, is what she now wears as a badge of honor, that I was putting people in jeopardy, physical jeopardy, just by offering words of criticism. And then Steve Scalise, the whip of the House, said I might have done something illegal. And so I told those men that they owed to you, my constituents, that they owed to me, and that they owed to the country either some basis for why words are dangerous and illegal, or that they had no basis to say those things and that does not reflect their thinking today. But I don't back down. I'm not afraid of these people. I think that we need a healthy dose of the truth in this place. And I'm tired of people lying about President Trump. I'm tired of them lying about me, and I'm not going to take it. And frankly, you guys deserve to be represented in a way that is honest and reflective and thoughtful, and that's the work I try to do for you. So I appreciate you joining me in outrage in that, David, and I'm going to keep fighting for you.
Thank you. I really appreciate that, Congressman, and thanks for having me on.
Thank you. All right, one of the big issues we've been dealing with in the Congress is this issue of sanctions with Russia and Belarus. And one concern I really have over how some of those authorities are given to the Biden administration is that it could really hurt American farmers. Rebecca from Pensacola is with us, and she had perspective regarding agriculture and some of these sanctions. Go right ahead, Rebecca, with your question or comment.
Okay, sir, we are an active duty family currently held hostage in Beaufort, South Carolina, and I have put a small farm in every single duty station we've been in the last 24 years, going on 30.
Well, thank you for your service.
It's the same for the next 6 years. Oh, not me, my husband. I'm just trying to keep my britches in their proper place.
Same.
At this point in time.
Well, tell me what you're thinking about how this stuff's going with the price of fertilizer. It's going through the roof, isn't it?
It is, and my concern is that we're hearing a lot of information on an Asian bird flu virus that we don't have the quote-unquote science to actually back up. That's a legitimate virus right now. We get most of our fertilizers from overseas countries that, we might or might not be funding their efforts in some way, shape, or form. And I'm just curious what that's going to do to our farmers there in Florida. I see reports day after day saying, well, you need to be worried about the food supply. We're not going to have enough. We're cutting off the internet to France. We're doing this. We're doing that. Globally, I get that's not exactly a house issue, but hey, I got family in the southern half of the state, and I am right now in the process of putting my 2 special needs boys right back in the panhandle to the laws of a state that I actually know and trust and vote on. I want to make sure my kids can be fed.
Amen to that. And this is an issue that the Congress has to worry about. It affects every American family to ensure that the price of food is affordable, the availability is there, and we have so many farmers in Northwest Florida that run on razor-thin margins. And when you see the price of fertilizer going up 20, 30, 40% in some cases, that's the difference in being able to plant or not. That's the difference in being able to make additional investment in infrastructure and irrigation and equipment or not. And I think that it is very irresponsible for the Biden administration to design sanctions without a plan, without an understanding of how it affects America. It seems to me like a lot of these sanctions regimes hurt like the poor and middle class people, but the elites seem to do just fine. Vladimir Putin hadn't missed any meals, so I don't know why people in Northwest Florida should have to. But I appreciate your perspective, and we can't wait to have you back in Florida, the free state of Florida, and we're very proud to be that. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
We always have to talk about election integrity as a policy matter. Homer from Baker has a question. Homer, you're live.
Thank you. I want to know what is being done to ensure election integrity. We don't really want the same thing to happen in 2020 that happened in 2022 that happened in 2020. And unless there is some kind of election integrity, we are never going to get people in office that can accomplish things and right some of the wrongs that have been done. So what?
Well, here's the initial threshold question on election integrity, Homer. Is this something that the United States Congress should take on, or is this something we got to battle out state by state? Now, I'm pretty confident in Florida because when we had people in Palm Beach County and Broward County who weren't running clean elections, Ron DeSantis fired them and replace them with people. And look, lo and behold, when you don't have corrupt people who break the law counting the votes, you can actually get a reliable result. You can get it in a reasonable period of time. You can have chain of custody. You can actually rely on the fact that the ballot that came in was submitted by the person that the ballot was sent to. It works in our state because of personnel. I worry that if Congress took on this issue, you would have Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer rewriting election law, not just in their crazy states, but in ours as well. And so I've taken the position, and I'm here for your feedback on it. I've gone to Georgia. I've gone to Michigan. I've gone to Arizona. I've even gone to California. And I've given lectures about how activists can become trained and capable to be poll watchers and elections officials and lawyers that respond to requests for injunction. And we have to build out a system that is more sophisticated to be able to catch fraud as it's happening. Because, look, once you take a bunch of fraudulent ballots and you pollute non-fraudulent ballots with the fraudulent ones, you can't ever unwind that, okay? That then has just tainted the entire election. and it drives people's confidence away. But would you rather us go battle this thing out state by state, or do you think that that the national Congress could take up the issue and not do more harm than good?
I don't think that anything the national people do is going to be any good, not with the people in charge right now. But I guess my concern is that it's not that long until the 2022 elections. And if they're, you know, and it's not Florida I'm worried about. It's some of these other states that I'm worried about.
Yep.
Is something being done there? And I know you can't do anything about them.
Well, I go there. I go and try to tell them.
That's one of the biggest problems we've got.
Well, yeah, I mean, you look at Fulton County, Georgia. I mean, that's just dripping with fraud, that place. And what I think they do is they just wait for the rest of Georgia's votes to come in. They figure out how many they need to will into existence. And then lo and behold, that's how many ballots show up in Fulton County. So I've gone there. I've tried to meet with people. I've tried to train them up. I've even sometimes tried to encourage the governors and secretaries of state in these places, you know, for lack of a better word, to man up and to do their jobs and to not be afraid of people like Stacey Abrams. So it's part inspiration, it's part perspiration, but you share my view that if we don't fix it, we can win the argument. We can have the better campaigns and the better candidates, but we will lose the elections if we don't get this part right. Thanks for your feedback, Homer. And I got somebody else who actually wants to weigh on exactly the same issue. John from Fort Walton, what's your perspective on how we get this right on elections?
First thing you do is take the people who are on film violating federal election laws and arrest them and put them in jail, whatever, try them and put them in jail. Because
you think Merrick Garland's going to do that? You think Joe Biden's Justice Department is?
I know that because my main gripe was that everybody out here pretty much knew this thing was, by January 6th, we pretty much knew it was a rigged election. But everybody in Congress ignored it. And that's
not everybody. I'm not going to let you get away with that. I was up there with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Jim Jordan and Scott Perry and Mo Brooks and a handful of others saying this is not right. This should not be certified. Yep. And you know, what would you do if you were me to convince other Republicans that we actually got to fix this and we can't ignore it?
Well, one first thing I'd have to have would be the assurance that somebody's going to go to jail. This is the biggest problem I got in this country right now is you watch all these people are violating all these different federal laws, and nobody's going to jail. And they got the DAs, the big cities are not putting anybody. Crime has taken over, and we no longer have any cognizant use for laws. They just ignore them. And that shows across the country.
You know what I think it started with? People are going to call me a conspiracy theorist, but I think when they got away with the Russia hoax and the real people in the Obama White House and with Hillary Clinton that designed that thing were able to skate and scapegoat some underlings, I think that opened up a Pandora's box of corruption in this country. I think that's what a lot of it goes back to.
I agree.
Good. Well, hey, thank you so much for your feedback. Thank you. And those are really good arguments that John made that more Republicans need to hear. And I'll tell you guys, when we go into these conference strategy sessions with the Republican team and they lay out the polling, you know, I think they rightly tell us you need to be talking about inflation. You need to be talking about gas prices. You need to be talking about Joe Biden's failures abroad and embarrassment for our country. But they say, oh, whatever you do, the two things that you can't talk about are the 2020 election issues or January 6th. Don't talk about the January 6th detainees. Don't call anyone a political prisoner. And the issue hasn't come up yet in our call, but I want to make sure it does because I want to talk about it. We don't leave our fellow Americans behind, and we do not deny civil rights and due process to any of our fellow Americans. And we should not live in a world where you had like the summer of 2020 with BLM and Antifa out burning down cities, killing people, attacking federal property, and you had like celebrities and Fortune 100 companies jumping over each other to see who could pay their bail, and yet we still have folks from January 6th who are subject to incarceration and charges that just totally wouldn't happen in the absence of politics. And you know why the Biden regime uses people like this as political pawns? Because they want to take these exquisite national security authorities that we intended to use against terrorists abroad, and they want to turn those inward against our fellow Americans and against a political movement that they fear. It's about fear and it's about control. And if they think they can scare people with January 6th in the absence of having an agenda for the upcoming midterms, that's exactly what they're going to do. And that's exactly the theater you will see playing out with Benny Thompson and Liz Cheney in the January 6th committee hearings. And really, it'll be a disgrace for the Congress to go through it. But a lot like the Russia hoax and the phony Ukraine impeachment, it kind of causes people to expose themselves and show themselves for who and what they really are. And I think ultimately that might be just what we need to excite and invigorate the American people to win our great country back. Got a lot of questions, got a lot of feedback. Kevin Bowie, thank you so much for your comment on Facebook regarding the January 6th detainees. I greatly appreciate that. I am going to go, to Connie in Gulf Breeze. Connie, thanks so much. What's your feedback?
It's Patsy.
Oh, I'm sorry, Patsy. It must have been a different register on the phone, but go ahead. What do you think we ought to be talking about?
Well, I think we need to do something to stop what's going on in this country. You hear, the things that the president has passed, that it's illegal, that's illegal, it's all what he's done, this is illegal, but nobody does anything about it. And what I want to know is, what do you think that if the tables were turned, what would the Democrats be doing to the Republicans if we were trying something like that? I don't believe in, two wrongs don't make a right, but sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. And I think we've waited a long time to start the fire.
Well, I appreciate that. And, I think that they would be engaging in every act of obstruction. They would be lying to the American people. We're not going to lie to anybody. We don't need to lie to anybody. We just need people to open their eyes to what's going on. Crime in our streets, open borders. They've destroyed the American dollar. They're more worried about pronouns than making sure that we can fill up our car with gas. And so, I think we need to make those arguments, and we have to expose them for the crooks that they are. What do you think?
Well, yes. But they have been exposed, but what good does it do?
Well, we got to win elections.
There has not been.
We got to win elections, and we got to make sure they don't steal them from us. We got to get power back. You see, if Jim Jordan and I can get control over the House Judiciary Committee, over investigations, over oversight, then I think that, you can get to what Homer was talking about earlier, where some people actually get prosecuted for crimes that they commit against our country. And they probably should be starting with the first family and Hunter Biden from my standpoint. I got to get to another caller, but Patsy, thank you so much for your feedback.
Mm-hmm.
All right, on this same vein, Bryant from Destin wanted to talk about what Republicans would be doing if we take the Congress in November. What's your advice?
Well, it seems like to me a lot of these federal agencies have become weaponized and biased, and I'm not so sure how you clear that up. If you have a red wave in November, how do you go about making laws that would end these biased and, right the wrongs that they just seem to be able to get away with?
Which federal agencies concern you the most?
Well, you have the IRS with that scandal. You've got the FBI. It seems like all of a sudden, whenever they raid a conservative's house, the media knows about it instantly. Hillary gets a call and gets to walk through the door and come in and just testify, where they go and bust down other people's door and round them up. It just seems like there's a double standard.
Well, it's politics, isn't it? At its core, doesn't that all look like they're trying to make a political point more than a legal case?
I would agree. The problem I have is I don't know if we can vote ourselves out of this mess at the federal level. Is it more up to the states to finally step up and shore this up? Do we need a convention of states? I mean, what needs to happen to make sure that these federal agencies are put in place?
Well, one thing that a lot of folks are talking about is actually getting some of the federal agencies outside of Washington. If you accept the premise that this place is the swamp, that this place is corrupt, that it's run by lobbyists, it's not really run by the people. Maybe you take the Department of Agriculture and you move it out to Iowa. Maybe you take the Department of Labor and move it to Dallas, Texas. Maybe you take the Department of Defense and move it to Northwest Florida. Maybe you actually make some of these places go out in the country where when these folks who are in leadership positions, send their kids to school. They're sending their kids to school with the kids of other just like regular Americans, not people in government and politics and influence peddling. And maybe when they go to the grocery store and they go to church, they're not just in this like incestuous DC elite, but they're actually out with the American people. Do you think that's a good idea or just a bad, expensive one?
No, I don't like that idea. If some of these people had to face everyday citizens and what they go through, I think they would run and hide.
Amen. Well, hey, thanks for your feedback. I've got another issue I've got to get to, and it's the vaccine mandates for our military. And I want to be very clear about this. I am totally opposed to these mandates. I think we've got to restore people who've been the victims of them. But Christy in Crestview wanted to weigh on this very important subject. Christy, you have the floor.
Hey, Matt. Thanks. I wanted to thank you for coming to the conference last Thursday in Santa Rosa Beach. That was good support for the people that were there, so thank you for that.
So this was a rally for medical freedom that I went to, and I could talk on this issue for like an hour, but they gave me like 10 minutes. And so I'm clearly like off script, overtime. The organizers are waving signs at me saying, please stop, you're overtime. But I was riled up and I was enthusiastically in support of the mission of that crowd.
Well, it's pretty obvious the crowd was enthusiastic of you being there. So.
Thanks. Well, what do you think we got to do for our military?
Those injections have to stop immediately. Johnson had Senator Johnson had a hearing back in January. The proof is there. It's part of the congressional record. He wrote the letter to Austin. Nothing has happened. This should be being brought up every single day. They continue to be injecting them. I know for a fact that ships are being injected with the third and fourth dose. There's proof that this is hurting them. This is the baseline of our national security is our troops. And the more that we poison them, the more they're getting harmed. This has got to stop. And not to say, they're going to be disabled for the rest of their lives. So what are we going to pay them disability for the rest of their lives? This has got to stop. It's got to stop today. And I'd like to know where the status of that is.
The status of it in Washington, D.C. is that it is full speed ahead. The entire apparatus of the Department of Defense is not only requiring these mandates, they are coercing people. They are retaliating against people who don't. I mean, if you want to do like a deep dive into the military vaccine issue, I've got a podcast called Firebrand. You can download it anywhere you get podcasts. In today's episode, I had 3 active duty military in detail describing the retaliation, describing the coercion, describing the harm that they personally have observed and experienced. And we have to fight for these people. My problem now is not only do I have all the Democrats against me and the Joe Biden people, I don't even have unanimity among the Republicans. So I need some help on this. I need my constituents. I need the American people to get in touch with their members of Congress and say, please do not punish our military service members who want medical freedom. This is very, very important, very critical. And I'm hopeful that I can do a little bit better. I got a lot of information at that conference Christy's referencing that I'm actually using to send to other people in Congress to try to get them on my side. But if you could make one argument, Christy, to someone who said, no, we need a fully vaccinated force, what's the one piece of evidence or the one argument you'd want them to be in possession of?
Look at the damage being done right now. The DMED database is there. It's part of the congressional record, period. The data is there. If they're not going to go by this, then they need to get out of office. They are shaming the entire country, and they need to resign. Any Republican that is not on board with this needs to get the hell out now.
Well, we need to get them on record, and I'm going to be introducing an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act, not only to stop the mandates, but to restore to their rank and with back pay anyone who is driven out as a consequence of a discharge or other retaliation or coercion. And I'm very serious about this, and this is a kitchen table issue for the families of Northwest Florida. Thank you so much for your feedback and your perspective, Christy. My friends, that brings us to the end of our hour. Gosh, that flew by. But if you're on the phone, we're going to have the opportunity for you to leave a message, and then me or a member of my staff will get back to you. That's really helpful if you've got a specific constituent need. Some of you had very specific issues that you weighed in on, and we want to have the chance to get back with you. Make sure that you go to gaetz.house.gov, sign up for our weekly newsletter. That way you'll be very informed. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve as your congressman. It is certainly the honor of my life, and we'll keep fighting for you.